We look at the Great Lakes and we see vast inland seas that stretch 2/3 of the way into the interior of the continent. But well into the 19th century, ships could not sail much further than Montreal because of barriers of Lachine Rapids and Niagara Falls. Until 1821, portaging was the only way to move goods along the Niagara River between Lake Ontario and Lake Erie. The east bank portage of the Niagara River, with its gentler climb up the escarpment, was the primary route around the falls. But after U.S. independence, the British were no longer able to access the east bank portage, so they established a portage service in Queenston. Queenston, at the base of the escarpment, was still a steep climb and 16 kilometers to the nearest navigable point on the Niagara River at Chippewa. Little wonder there was desire on both sides of the river to bypass Niagara Falls with a water route. Construction of the Erie Canal from Tonawanda near Buffalo to the Hudson River began in 1817. The first ship sailed through the canal in 1821. This gave U.S. merchants easier access to markets. And in the climate of bitter rivalry after the War of 1812, merchants on the west bank of the Niagara River soon realized that a canal on their side of the river was necessary too. In 1825, the Welland Canal was begun. In 1830, the first ship sailed from Lake Ontario to Lake Erie. The canal was the largest transportation project in the early history of Canada and played an important role in the developing of the country, much as the building of the Canadian Pacific Railroad did 50 years later. The building of the canal created prosperity along the route. Many small communities were established by the builders of the canal. And with the canal running through the heart of St. Catharines, the city developed into the fifth largest population center in Ontario by 1875. By the turn of the 20th century, the 19th century canal was too small for the wider, longer ships used on the lakes. Plans were made for a fourth version of the canal. Construction started in 1914 and finished in 1932. The modern canal follows the old route until it reaches the bottom of the escarpment, at which point it runs due north to Lake Ontario, abandoning the former canal route through St. Catharines. After it was abandoned, the canal was viewed as an industrial hazard by parents whose children swam in the murky waters of the canal. Some sections were used as garbage dumps, some sections as industrial spillways, and from the 1960s to the 1980s, a highway was built along part of its route. The old canal still runs through St. Catharines, a symbol of a robust industrial past and an uncertain future. The Welland Canal Preservation Society advocated that the canal be preserved, and they established a trail along the canal. The group disbanded after completing the trail. The recreational trail built by the Preservation Society still runs beside the canal, but is underused. And the canal is largely invisible, overgrown, and hidden by invasive trees, which are hastening its deterioration. The Welland Canal needs to be declared a National Historic Site to preserve its integrity. The canal is now almost 200 years old, and the canal was constructed in the same period as the Rideau Canal, a well-known National Historic Site in this country, which is also a World Heritage Site and brings hundreds of thousands of tourists and their dollars into the region of Ottawa. The City of St. Catharines has campaigned for years to have the canal declared a National Historic Site, but under the previous government, the campaign was not successful. One hopes that the new government will be more invested in preserving an important part of Canadian history. The canal could be leveraged into a recreation centre and tourist attraction for the city, boost civic pride, and raise the status of the region from Rust Belt to centre of creative excellence. There are just so many examples of historic transportation routes being transformed in just this manner, such as the High Line in New York City, Rideau Canal in Ottawa, Canal side in Buffalo, our own backyard, is the Erie Canal reinvigorated. A few examples of historical transportation routes transformed. Canal side in Buffalo, Lake Erie reinvented. Chesapeake in Ohio, a 385 long national park in the U.S. Rideau Canal, and finally